Welcome to the wonderful forests around me. They are full of biodiversity, but it's all under attack. This is today, and welcome to the future. Absolute devastation. Been really shocked at how big this wind farm has become. Dropping. The biggest turbines in the world, built, as we're claiming, illegally. They're not going to deliver any climate change benefit. We've got to look for beauty. We have to be creative and not destroyers and consumers. A future that I think we should be proud of. This isn't progress. This is the opposite of progress. This is what happens when parasites destroy their host.
Because to be honest, we're all fed by the monster of wild uncertainty driven by politics and institutional fear.
Alexander Pohl, I'm in my almost mid-40s.
I studied civil and environmental engineering, been fascinated by engineering and the environment. So that was all about building infrastructure to fix the planet's problems. And I spent 5 years with KPMG doing all types of things. I did a lot of sustainability. And the early days of something called the Clean Development Mechanism, this was the early days of climate change. So this is 20 years ago. Climate change is a thing. People are starting to care about it. And the United Nations set up a program with hundreds, if not billions of dollars to incentivize companies to reduce emissions. And we helped them. We did the auditing. We did the validation. And it turns out it was all corrupt. I worked with the biggest companies, BP, Shell, Ineos, Hitachi. When we helped them greenwash some of them.
What do you mean by greenwashing?
I do a little bit of good that I talk a lot about, and then that hides. It's like an iceberg. I have a green-tipped iceberg with everything under the water being black. We helped a lot around auditing because, a lot of people rely on numbers to make decisions. And if you have a company like KPMG saying the numbers are good, well, even if the numbers aren't good, people still believe that they're good. I will pay you some money to say this looks okay. You will not be held account, but you can do that across financial numbers, climate change numbers, amounts of pollution. I talk a lot about the little bit of good I do so that everyone is distracted from all of the bad. It was all about money. So I said, okay, well, who controls the money in the world? Well, it's the banks. I said, okay, well, I need to go to a bank. And so I found a bank, a job looking at risk, and it was at HSBC, being one of the most sustainable banks in the world.
That green finance provides a once-in-a-generation opportunity or a once-in-a-multi-generation opportunity to, at the same time, be bankers and doing the right thing.
Did hundreds of millions of lending to big projects, power stations fueled by trees, big wind farms, big solar farms. And I thought, we're good. I was like, well, this doesn't feel right. These people are doing these big projects, making lots of money, but they're not sustainable. These are some of the most ego-driven monsters. There's a lot of dark stuff in these companies' supply chains. It's all about money. And they were using the sustainability agenda just as another tool, another stick to beat their suppliers with. So there was nothing about nobly saving the world. It was about more profit. And at that point, I was like, this is a broken system. It was only through random conversation with someone locally who had said there had been a meeting about a wind farm. And we said, wind farm? We didn't see any wind farms. There were none to be seen. And so then I started to dig. I'm in a natural place with Natura 2000 protected. Everyone talks about nature and how important nature is for health and well-being. And then there's this basically industrial power station over hundreds of kilometers, square kilometers of forest. It just didn't make sense. And then I started digging. I removed the facade and I could see behind the curtain. And then I started seeing the money You know, this money thing that I tried to run away from, these people are everywhere. You know, this is a systemic corruption. And that's why I persisted with you. And when people listen to our conversation and see the broader story, they can start recognizing those patterns in their own lives.
So, there we are in nature.
I just don't understand why we're so focused on climate. The solutions are destroying nature. You know, we almost treat the climate like a living thing, but it's not alive. Ultimately, it's nature that you need to take care of, because that's what takes care of us.
But windmills aren't bad, right?
Well, I'm not against the wind. We've always used the wind, you know, thousands of years for sailing and mechanical movements. I just have something against using it really badly and in a way that actually makes the problem worse than actually fix it. A wind turbine's made of plastic. You need to use a big area of nature to make electricity. So the wind turbines are just another inefficient tool to exacerbate our electricity problem. Once a wind turbine's been put in an ecosystem, that ecosystem's broken. You know, it will never be its full potential.
But somehow oil plants are doing the same, isn't it?
You're right. An oil plant done badly is doing the same. But if you think about it, an oil plant takes a smaller amount of space. It can be put somewhere for a long period of time. And if we spent the money to do it properly, you know, a lot of our industrial infrastructure would not damage nature the way that, you know, it does now. So rather than putting up wind farms, I would argue we should be improving the quality and technology of our existing infrastructure, untouched in a way. But they're filling it full of turbines. No people, no animals. The only things that can really survive in a wind farm and thrive are machines. So I'm asking myself, are we solving for machines or for humans and nature? So basically they're giving it a death sentence.
It's old family property, a couple of 100 years back. To the farm there is about 10 hectares of fields around here. I got a very big surprise walking there on the property, and out of the fog I started to see some new creatures. It was like steel buildings, and then I saw it was huge windmills. Before 2019 they were not there.
But do you think one day wind energy can become a solution?
My answer is no, definitely no. I don't see a future with windmills. I wanted to be these huge parks into the national grid. I don't understand. The problem I see is a global problem, because studying this from scratch, the mining and the refining and the production and the fabrication of the windmills and all these materials that is needed consumes a huge amount of energy, which is 100% fossil. These rare metals are to a big extent Chinese. They are dominating the market. And now people around the world are looking for new mining to assure or safeguard their supply of these metals. So we are going from a fossil society to a metal society, and I don't believe it's the right thing.
We could stop the wind farm, that the people who are doing it, that we've identified that the fraud is happening all over the place, and they're all being caught with their trousers down. You know, they've become so brash that, you know, and so audacious that, you know, they started to make mistakes.
You are one of Alexander's lawyers. It's quite a brave action to challenge wind farms as a private person. I mean, you're fighting against big corporations involving millions of dollars. Why do you believe in this case?
Alexander has identified an error in the environmental legal system. These errors that is hard to catch legally. And that is basically because the environmental code in Sweden and the environmental legal process is based on the trust of the developers. And besides that, the legal force of a permit is strong, and the public interest is in the hands of the authorities.
Been highlighting the fact that they've been committing fraud and doing illegal activities, but the courts have not been giving us access. And actually it's reached the point now that they're just dismissing our cases, citing the fact that we as citizens don't have the legal right to question permits issued by the government, or even really to question the government at all. And so it's super strange if we don't have access to justice. How is the government accountable if citizens can't hold it to account? I mean, we have all the evidence, but if the evidence doesn't even make it into the courts, it's as if our evidence didn't exist.
There are some big system shifts ahead of us, and they're pushing the narrative towards green renewables. How do you see this green wonderland they are creating from out of a juristic point of view?
And I fully support the idea of green electricity, of course. The problem is that there is no such thing as green electricity, as long as the production is done at the cost of the land, the livelihood, and the culture of the indigenous people.
Wind turbines are surprising machines. You know, I'm an engineer by degree, so I used to love these things. But you know, each turbine takes about 30 truckloads to get here. Steel towers, plastic blades, but they're made with layers and layers of bisphenol A plastic, usually around a core of carbon fiber or balsa wood from the Amazon. And then on the outside they put some kind of an epoxy paint or something along those lines. Actually, over time they degrade, just like a propeller on a boat or a propeller on a plane. So over the life of a turbine, they're throwing out kilos and tons of microplastics. And then each blade is approximately 80 meters long, weighing 20 tons. The generator on top is probably another 60 tons. There's about 100 or 120 tons. And then what lurks beneath is a massive raft of concrete. Thousands of tons of concrete down there. Massive hole. This is what they call progress. It's always carbon dioxide. Always carbon dioxide. No talk about poisoning the planet through heavy metals. No talking about poisoning the planet through plastics. You know, if you stop burning fossil fuels but you keep making plastics, you still kill the planet.
These steel towers are being produced in China. The reason? It's cheap. They're manufactured in coal-fired steel plants, as we're being told, not so environmental friendly. Made in China and shipped in large cargo ships all the way to Sweden. Driven hundreds of kilometers through the forest and finally be constructed to last 20 years. Just to produce some electricity. And all the energy that went into it could be used for other things.
The reality of wind farms. Devastation. Clearfeld. Line them up, cut them down. Rows and rows. Ready for the machines to come and collect them to be liquefied, shredded. And you can see they're going to be blasting this out. Those are all explosive holes. And as you can see, you know, this isn't pretty. But if it's hidden away and people don't see it, people don't have to deal with it. This used to be the top of a hill. They blasted it away with great violence. You know, one of the things about wind farms that I'm learning is that there's a lot of violence involved in wind power. Starting from how it's made, through to where the minerals come from that they use in the supply chains.
It's not a surprise. Windmills heavily rely on critical minerals: neodymium, praseodymium and dysprosium. And these rare earth elements rely on a volatile and Chinese concentrated supply chains. Delivered 70% of the global demand in 2018. The Chinese market will go wild. The bad news, it's damaging a lot more than it will fix.
包头是中国最大的稀土生产基地。尽管稀土是珍贵的矿产资源，但是污染危害性却非常大。
The environmental impact of the extraction is estimated to be more damaging than fossil fuel extraction due to the toxic effluent emissions and waste generated from the intensive mining activity, generated as a result of the refinement of the minerals. It has impacted the access to fresh water and food production in local communities surrounding the mines. In some regions, vegetation has stopped growing. Cattle have died from toxins in the soil, and drinking water has been contaminated. But there's more. Windmills also need cobalt. A lot. Again, a rare mineral. 70% of the world's supply comes out of the cobalt mines of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You know, that African country, which strangely enough is in a bloody conflict for generations. To say it in less words, we're creating a bit of a mess. And no, we're not saving the planet with it.
When I was sitting in my office in London, I used to finance wind farms, and I believed in this, but I didn't know. And you know, as soon as I got more information and I started looking behind the propaganda, I couldn't believe it. I had cognitive dissonance, and I never thought I would be that kind of person who would just ignore something. So then I went into it, and you know, I've come into these wind farms now, I've looked at the devastation, I've spoken to the people who build them. They even admit that this is ridiculous. But they're getting paid, and they've got bills to pay, so they just go along with it. But at some point we're all going to look back and say, why were we such idiots?
This should save the planet.
What I like to call the front line. I live here, Boyvatnet. This one is owned by Jamkraft and Person Invest. I have a court case against them as well. And I had to ask myself, why? Why here? Why so many wind farms? All these companies wanting to build wind farms here, where it's not windy, but it's remote. So I wondered, is this really about saving the climate, or could there be a different motivator? So this is Björkvatnet, 33 turbines. And it's being built by a company called Infravia, French private equity house. They talk about this as being their gift to the world. You know, it's going to save the planet, going to save climate. What's a French company doing in the remote forests of Sweden? You can't build a wind farm on your own. And it turns out that this wind farm was originally developed by General Electric, just that little company from America that needed a place to launch their new prototype mega turbine, and they found a remote place in the middle of the Swedish forest to do that. Of course, they couldn't build it alone, so they found a company called Stenger and Ibsen, which is a Danish company. They came here not with a scalpel. You know, it's also so important if you care about the environment. But they came here with basically a sledgehammer and a chainsaw. Of course, you can't build a wind farm without someone to take the electricity. And in this case, the poster child is Google. They are going to save the world with a wind farm. Why do they need it? Oh, well, Google's building a new data center for the cloud in Finland, 1,000 kilometers away.
So the electricity here will partly go to Finland?
Yes, most of it will go to Finland. And why is it going to Finland? Because it's cheap.
Why doesn't it stay in Sweden?
Sweden doesn't need it. Sweden met its 2030 renewable energy target in 2018. This place is full of hydroelectric from 1930 and 1940s. So they don't need the electricity. And actually most people don't realize that a lot of wind farms and other renewable energy projects are to feed new infrastructure that was never there before. So it's not even fixing, the existing energy. It's all new. But of course, Infravia can't build it on its own. Infravia doesn't have any money. They're just a manager. So they have to find people. They have a fund in Luxembourg because it's good for tax, tax avoidance. And they found investors who are happy to put their money into Luxembourg to get a tax-efficient way of doing business. This wind farm will never make money. These wind farms are designed to make losses, so they don't pay taxes here. They take all that money to Luxembourg, so you can get, the maximum profits. Who did they find? They found Munich Re, one of the largest reinsurance companies in the world that just talks about how great it is for the environment. They're from Germany. This is a super secret Luxembourg fund, as most Luxembourg funds are. You don't want to know who's tax avoiding because it doesn't look so good. But they got themselves the Oslo City Pension Fund from Norway, W&W, a pension and insurance company in Germany, and finally a Dutch company, the Physiotherapists Pension Fund, invested in the remote forests of Sweden. I wrote to all of them and said, hey, do you know what people are doing with your money? Maybe they're not telling you the truth. None of them really cared. So, of course you can't build a wind farm without banks. BNP Paribas, a top bank. More banks, Dutch bank, ABN AMRO. Another French bank, SocGen. And finally, I discovered that the fund in Luxembourg has an SDG-linked equity facility. That means they borrow the money, even for the little bit that they're supposed to put in themselves. I said, yes, HSBC, the bank I worked for. I wrote to my old boss, and I said, hey, you guys are the top, the pinnacle of sustainability, an SDG-linked, so Sustainable Development Goals-linked facility. What if they're lying, and it's not sustainable? They basically said, hey, we're not really that bothered what they do on the level. We just take an average, and we just look at it from an umbrella perspective. So again, no one cares about the detail. It's just about the profits and the image, and that really hurt. But of course, I thought, hey, there's a United Nations of players here. The United Nations is actually involved. Infravia proudly wears the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment badge, which is supposed to be the gold standard that this investor actually cares, honorable and trustworthy with regards to his sustainability standards. I wrote to them and said, hey, Infravia is misusing your badge of honor. And the CEO, Fiona Reynolds, came back and said, look, we spoke to the company. They said everything's okay. They did their paperwork on time and they paid their fee, so therefore we're not going to do anything else. I understand there's a lot of money at play here, but all of this just seems to be smoke and mirrors. Sustainability is just distracting you. You hear the words, you don't actually look at the detail. And the only conclusion I could come to, based on all of these players, what they're doing, looking at the projects, looking at the actual impacts, the benefits, it's just all about money.
I'm angry at the company that's building the wind farms. I'm angry at the companies that make the turbines. I'm angry at the politicians and the regulators who gave the permits. I'm angry at the NGOs who tell us that, these turbines will save the world. And then I'm angry at, Greta, Al Gore, all these celebrities who could do so much good, and they're saying wind turbines are good.
By NGOs who can use it for their own, profits. The NGOs are hijacking politics, and the politics and NGOs are being hijacked by corporates. So it's It's very confusing and complex.
Greta, before you get started, I'm doing a documentary film to save forests. I've come from Jämtland up north. What do you think is the next step?
Raising awareness.
Raising awareness?
That's our goal, and we still haven't achieved that.
That is such a good point. Hey, good stuff. Hey, the other conspiracy, the other fraud, the other exploitation. Where there's fear, there's money. I'm a 20-year banker trying to tell the truth. Hey! Stasi! Stasi! Whoa! Hey! Hey! No! Hey! No! Hey! 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 3 months later, they call you out of the blue, say you are suspected of a crime. I never experienced anything like that. You know, 6 guys in gas masks. Don't even say anything, in silence grab you from behind. They don't speak. You know, they pin me down for 15 minutes, handcuff me brutally, smash my everything that I had with me. They treat me like I'm a piece of dirt. And all I did was just get freaked out by 6 guys in gas masks. And now they're calling me and say that I have no rights. I had to hang up because I can't deal with that. If they want me, they can come and get me. But I mean, this is police brutality of the, you know, intimidation, total intimidation. I can't talk to them.
And its future is at stake. We must build back better, but better for the good. Headwind to turn the tide, yes.